People like you don't belong here. This food isn't for your kind. That's what this 16-year-old brat screamed while snatching my groceries at Fresh Mart. His mom? A total hoe. Karen immediately called the cops. Send 20 police cars. There's a dangerous man here. She kept yelling about how she runs the neighborhood, and I regretted shopping there. But here's the thing. She had no idea who I was. Those 20 police cars she demanded, they all answered to one person. And when she found out who that person was, let's just say karma hit different comment. Where were you watching from? I was having a perfectly normal Thursday afternoon at Fresh Mart, standing in the checkout line with my cart full of organic vegetables and fresh meat. I'd been living in Oakwood Estates for exactly 2 weeks, having been appointed police chief 6 months ago. But choosing to keep a low profile while I got to know the community I'd be serving, my casual jeans and t-shirt gave nothing away about my profession, which was exactly how I wanted it. The cashier was scanning my items when I heard heavy footsteps behind me, followed by the unmistakable sound of teenage arrogance clearing its throat. Before I could turn around, a pale hand reached over my shoulder and grabbed my bag of organic tomatoes right off the conveyor belt. Hey, you don't need this fancy stuff. The voice belonged to a kid who couldn't have been older than 16, with that particular brand of entitled smirk that only comes from never being told no. Tyler Thompson, though I didn't know his name yet, stood there holding my groceries like he'd just conquered something. This food isn't for your kind. People like you should stick to the regular aisles. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying his age despite his attempts at intimidation. I stayed calm, years of police training, keeping my voice steady. As I extended my hand, "Son, those are my tomatoes. Please give them back." Simple, direct, no escalation. But Tyler's face contorted into mock horror, and he stumbled backward dramatically, clutching the bag to his chest like I'd just threatened. Him with violence? Mom, move. His scream echoed through the store, causing heads to turn from every aisle. This man is attacking me. Help someone. Help. The performance was so over the top that several shoppers just shook their heads and went back to their shopping. But one person took the bait completely. The clicking of expensive heels on linoleum announced her arrival before I even saw her. Patricia Thompson burst around the end cap display like a blonde hurricane, her designer handbag swinging wildly as she rushed to her son's aid. "Get away from my baby," she shrieked immediately, pulling out her phone with one manicured hand while pushing Tyler behind her with the other. Her voice hit a pitch that made the fluorescent light seem to flicker. "I'm calling the police right now." I watched with a mixture of amazement and exhaustion as she dialed her fingers, shaking with righteous fury. "Hello? Hello? Yes, this is an emergency. There's a dangerous man attacking us at Fresh Mart on Oak Street." Her voice cracked with fake tears that appeared instantly. "He's about 6 feet tall, threatening my teenage son. Send backup. Send 10 cars. No, 20. Send 20 police cars and the SWAT team, hurry." Several customers had now pulled out their phones, but instead of calling for help, they were recording the spectacle. The irony wasn't lost on me that in trying to paint me as the aggressor, Patricia was creating evidence of her own hysteria. I calmly took out my own phone and hit record, making sure to capture the audio clearly. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level and professional, "your son took my groceries and used discriminatory language. I simply asked for them back." Patricia whirled on me, her face red with indignation. "Shut up, people like you always play. The victim, always causing problems in nice neighborhoods?" She jabbed a finger at me, her voice rising even higher. "On the board. The head off the board. You'll regret ever coming to this store." The security guard, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood frozen by the entrance, clearly unsure whether to intervene. I nodded at him reassuringly, then turned back to Patricia. With genuine curiosity, "What neighborhood would that be, ma'am?" "Oakwood Estates," she declared triumphantly, as if the name itself was a weapon. "The nice area, the exclusive area. Not that someone like you could ever afford to live there." The smile that crossed my face must have unsettled her, because she took a step back, pulling Tyler with her. "I actually just moved to Oakwood Estates 2 weeks ago," I said pleasantly. "What a lovely coincidence." The color drained from Patricia's Face so fast I thought she might faint right there in the produce section. That's impossible, she sputtered. I would know I know everyone. You're lying. Tyler, still clutching my tomatoes like a life preserver, looked between his mother and me with growing uncertainty. The bravado was starting to crack, reality seeping in through the gaps. I let the silence stretch for a moment, then gestured to my groceries, still waiting on the conveyor belt. May I finish checking out? I'd hate for the ice cream to melt. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. No sound coming out. Finally, she grabbed Tyler's arm and started backing away, her eyes never leaving mine. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll see. Those police will be here any minute, and then you'll be sorry. As they retreated, Tyler tossed my tomatoes back onto the belt with unnecessary force, one of them rolling onto the floor with a soft splat. I picked it up, paid for my groceries, and headed for the exit, knowing with absolute certainty that this was far from over. Patricia Thompson had just declared war on the wrong neighbor, and she didn't even know it yet. Wait, if he really lived in my neighborhood, why hadn't I seen him before? Why was he smiling like he knew something I didn't? Type your neighborhood. Name if you've ever dealt with a Karen like this. The look on Patricia Thompson's face when she pulled into her driveway, saw me stepping out of the house directly across the street, was worth documenting for posterity. Her grocery bag slipped from her hands, sending cans rolling across her perfectly manicured lawn as she stood there, mouth agape, looking like she'd seen a ghost. No, 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 she shrieked, the sound carrying clearly across the quiet. Suburban street? This can't be happening? I offered a friendly wave as I walked to my mailbox, acting as though our encounter at the store hadn't happened. Beautiful evening, isn't it, neighbor? I called out pleasantly. Her face turned an alarming shade of purple as she scrambled to collect her scattered groceries, shooting daggers at me with every movement. That night, the war began in earnest. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, music started blasting from Thompson House at a volume that probably violated several city ordinances. I could see Patricia through her living room window, phone in hand, live streaming to what I assumed was some private neighborhood group, teaching the intruder a lesson. I heard her shout over the music. This is what happens when the wrong element tries to move into our neighborhood. I calmly reached for my phone and started documenting everything, texting my deputy chief. A simple message, Phase 1 initiated. They're taking the bait. At 3 in the morning, the music finally stopped, only to be replaced by the sound of eggs hitting my front door. Tyler's aim was terrible. Most of them hit the siding, leaving trails of yolk that would be a pain to clean in the morning. By 4 in the morning, their 3 dogs mysteriously got loose and ran straight into my yard, where they proceeded to dig up my newly planted flower beds and defecate on my front steps. Watched it all from my window, my security cameras capturing. Every moment in crystal clear high definition, Patricia stood on her porch in a silk robe, pretending to call for the dogs while making no actual effort to retrieve them. Oh no, she called out in the fakest voice I'd ever heard. How did they get out? Bad dogs come back. She was still filming herself, probably thinking she was creating plausible deniability. What she was actually creating was evidence. The next morning, I was out front watering my surviving plants as if nothing had happened. The egg residue on my door had already been documented and cleaned. The dog mess removed, and my flower beds temporarily repaired. Patricia marched across the street like she was leading an army, though her confidence faltered slightly when she saw how calm I appeared. You don't belong here, she spat, stopping just at the edge of my property line. This is a nice neighborhood, a family neighborhood. We have standards, continued watering. My plants not even looking at her as I responded. Certainly is a lovely neighborhood. I can see why you'd want to protect it from people who throw eggs at houses and let their dogs destroy property. Her face flushed, but she pressed on. I don't know what you're implying, but I'll make your life here an absolute hell until you leave. Ma'am, I said, finally turning to face her with a pleasant smile. You already started. Please feel free to continue. I'm documenting everything for posterity. The threat was subtle, but clear. Patricia's eyes narrowed as she noticed the security camera mounted prominently by my front door. Ha! She laughed, pointing at it. You think that scares me? You think one little camera is going to protect you? She spun on her heel and marched back to her house, already pulling out her phone to text someone. That night, I watched from my study as Tyler crept across the street with a baseball bat. He smashed the visible camera with 3 swings, then pulled out a can of spray paint. Oh, what he wrote on my garage door was so vile, so racist that even describing it makes my stomach turn. But the best part? He filmed himself doing it, posting to what he thought was a private social media account. Got his camera, he captioned the video. Now the loser can't prove anything, mom's going to be so proud. Of course, what neither Tyler nor Patricia knew was that the visible camera was a decoy. $30 fake from an online retailer. The real cameras, 4 of them in total, were hidden in my porch lights, mailbox, doorbell, and a decorative rock in my garden. Every angle was covered, every crime recorded in perfect detail. I sat in my home office reviewing the footage. My phone rang. It was Linda, my next-door neighbor, speaking in a hushed whisper. Marcus, I don't mean to pry, but Patricia doesn't know what you do for a living, does she? I chuckled softly. No, Linda, she doesn't, and I'd appreciate it if we kept it that way for now. There was a pause. Then Linda sighed. She's gotten 3 families to move away in the last 2 years. Just be careful. She's meaner than she looks. I ended the call and pulled up the crime statistics for our neighborhood. 3 families moving in 2 years, all of them minorities. Of them citing hostile environment in their moving papers. Patricia Thompson had been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, thinking her position on the board made her untouchable. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. My phone buzzed with another text from my deputy. Chief Washington, should we intervene? I typed back quickly. Not yet. Let her dig deeper. The hole isn't quite deep enough. I saved the video. Files to multiple secure servers. I couldn't help but smile. Patricia thought she was waging psychological warfare. She had no idea she was playing checkers against someone who had been mastering chess for 20 years. But how deep would Patricia dig her own grave? And what exactly was I waiting for? Comment karma if you think Patricia's about to get what's coming. The Oakwood Estates Community Center was packed to capacity for what Patricia had dramatically dubbed an emergency meeting regarding neighborhood security. She had sent out emails, posted flyers, and personally called every homeowner she could reach, painting a picture of imminent danger that had successfully terrified half the neighborhood. Arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a seat in the back row where I could observe everything. Patricia had prepared an actual PowerPoint presentation titled The Marcus Problem, complete with blurry photos she'd taken of me from her window. As people filed in, I noticed the demographics of the crowd. Mostly white, mostly middle-aged, mostly looking uncomfortable but too polite to leave. Patricia stood at the front in her best business suit, shuffling papers and whispering urgently. To Tyler, who sat in the front row, looking simultaneously bored and smug, several board members flanked her at the head table, including the HOA president, an elderly man named Richard, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. At exactly 7 o'clock, Patricia clicked on her laser pointer and began, "Thank you all for coming to this urgent meeting," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "I've called you here because we have a serious threat to our community's safety and values." She clicked to the first slide, a zoomed-in photo of me watering my plants. "This man," she continued, pointing at my image like I was on a wanted poster, "moved in 2 weeks ago, under suspicious circumstances. He claims to have purchased the Morrison house, but Hassanian verified this. Has anyone checked his background, its references?" Patricia's voice rose with each question. "He attacked my teenage son at Freshmart yesterday. Poor Tyler was just shopping when this man became aggressive and threatening." Tyler nodded vigorously from his seat, adding, "He looked at me really scary. I thought he was going to hurt me." A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably, but several others were nodding along. Someone in the middle muttered something about property values, and I made a mental note of their face. Patricia clicked to the next slide, edited security. Footage from her own camera that conveniently cut out all of Tyler's actions. "I have video evidence of his suspicious behavior," she declared triumphantly. The video showed me standing in my driveway, then cut abruptly to me walking into my house. "See how he's always watching, always lurking?" Patricia's voice had taken on a conspiratorial tone. I make a motion as a board member to begin proceedings to have him removed from our neighborhood. Who's with me? About a dozen hands shot up immediately, though I notice many more people looking uncertain. Richard, the HOA president, cleared his throat nervously. Patricia, we can't just remove someone from their home without cause. There are laws. Patricia's face flushed. Laws? Laws? What about the law of protecting our children, our property values, our way of life? The dog whistle was so loud it was practically a foghorn. Before anyone could respond, I stood up from my seat in the back. The room turned as one to look at me, and Patricia's face went through the several rapid color changes. Thank you for inviting me, Patricia, I said calmly, walking toward the front of the room. I didn't invite you, she shrieked, clutching her laser pointer like a weapon. HOA rules clearly state that all residents can attend open meetings, I replied, pulling out my phone. I took the liberty of reading the entire handbook. Fascinating document. Richard looked relieved at the interruption. You're absolutely right. Mr. I smiled pleasantly. Washington, Marcus, Washington. And I have some videos I'd like to share with the community if that's all right. Patricia started to object, but Richard was already nodding. Fair is fair. If Patricia can present evidence, so can our new neighbor. I connected my phone to the projector with practiced ease, noting how Patricia's hands had started shaking. Let's start with the full, unedited footage from Fresh Mart yesterday, I said, pressing play. The room watched in silence as the video showed Tyler stealing my groceries, using offensive language, and then pretending to be attacked while his mother called the police. The audio of Patricia demanding 20 police cars was crystal clear. That's fake, Patricia stammered as gasps rippled through the room. It's deepfake technology, AI. I calmly switched to the next video. This is from my security system last night, I said. The footage showed Tyler vandalizing my property while Patricia watched from her porch, clearly directing him. When the spray-painted horrible words appeared on screen, several people in the audience stood up in shock. A middle-aged man in a business suit abruptly stood and headed for the exit, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear. I can't be associated with this. My company has diversity initiatives. A woman who had been nodding along with Patricia earlier turned on her with visible fury. You told us he was dangerous? You said he threatened Tyler? You never mentioned Tyler did that? Richard, the HOA president, grabbed the microphone with shaking hands, sweat beading on his forehead. Patricia, these are serious criminal acts. HOA could be held liable for not addressing bias-motivated crimes in our community. Our insurance doesn't cover this. The association's lawyer, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, was now frantically scribbling notes while shaking his head in obvious distress. Tyler had shrunk so far down in his seat, he was practically horizontal, his face burning red as he heard snickers and whispers from younger residents. Yo, is that the same Tyler from Oakwood High? Someone stage whispered. The one who got rejected. By Kesha Johnson last month. Oh my God, Patricia, what have you done? Someone shouted. World Star, a younger resident called out, already posting clips online. The room erupted in chaos, voices overlapping as people expressed outrage, disbelief, and in some cases, disgust at their own complicity.
Oh.
Patricia's supporters were suddenly very quiet, several of them slinking toward the exit. This is entrapment. Patricia screamed over the noise. He set us up. Probably a criminal. A drug dealer. Check his background. Richard banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. Motion to remove Marcus Washington from the neighborhood, he called out when the room finally quieted. The vote was 15-12 in my favor with several abstentions. Patricia's face contorted with rage as the results were announced. You're all traitors, she screamed. I've protected this neighborhood for years, and this is how you repay me. She turned to me, her fingers shaking as she pointed. You think you're so smart? Who do you think you are? I stood slowly, letting the question hang in the air. For a moment, everyone leaned forward, sensing something significant was about to happen. That's an excellent question, Patricia, I said quietly. But tonight isn't the night for that answer. I packed up my phone and headed for the door, pausing just before I left. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check who signs the paychecks of those 20 police cars you wanted to send after me. The silence that followed me out was deafening. What did he mean by paychecks? Is Marcus connected to the police somehow? Or was he bluffing?
8.
Who is he if you're dying to know? Marcus's real identity. The next morning, Patricia launched what could only be described as a digital blitzkrieg. Against me? By the time I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, she had already posted in 10 different community groups online, each post more unhinged than the last. Dangerous individual in Oakwood Estates. Protect your children. Read one headline accompanied by that same blurry photo of me watering plants. Another post claimed I was running a drug operation from my garage, while a third suggested I was casing homes for burglary. The lies were so outrageous that they would have been funny if they weren't potentially dangerous. I phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Have you seen what she's posting? This is insane. I scrolled through the posts, screenshotting everything from my growing evidence file. But Patricia's biggest mistake came in the form of her son's social media presence. Tyler, in true teenage fashion, had been documenting their entire harassment campaign on video, thinking he was being clever by using a fake account. What he didn't realize was that he'd forgotten to turn off location tags, and every single post was geotagged to their home address. One video showed Patricia in the background, clearly directing him. Post more, make him look dangerous. We need people to believe he's a threat. Another showed her on the phone with someone. And while Tyler was filming himself making faces at the camera, Patricia's conversation was audible in the background. I'll pay you $2,000 cash if you write an article about him, she was saying. Just say he's got a criminal record or something. The fatal phone call came that evening. Patricia, thinking she was being smart, used a burner phone to call a friend who ran a local blog. What she didn't know was that my home security system included audio recording capabilities. It could pick up conversations from her front porch when she stepped outside to make private calls. Listen, Janet, Patricia's voice was clear on the recording. I need you to write something about my neighbor, the black guy I told you about. There was a pause, presumably Janet responding. I don't care if you didn't have evidence, Patricia snapped. Just look at him. People will believe it. They always do when it's, someone like him. Another pause. Yes, $2,000 cash. Just make him sound dangerous, criminal, whatever works. There was a long pause on the other end before Janet spoke, her voice noticeably cooler. Patricia, I run a legitimate blog. I can't just fabricate stories. That's defamation, and I could lose everything. Patricia's voice turned sharp and manipulative. It's not fabricating if everyone already knows it's true. Look at him. People will believe it because they want to believe it. Besides, her tone became sickeningly sweet. Remember when I helped with your custody case? When I testified about what a good mother you were? Such a shame if I had to reconsider that testimony. The silence was deafening before Janet responded. Patricia? That's blackmail. It's friendship, Patricia hissed. Real friends help each other. 2,000 cash or I might remember things differently about your ex-husband's allegations. After hanging up, Patricia noticed Linda's young daughter playing with my golden retriever through the fence. The child was giggling as the dog licked her fingers. Patricia burst out of her house like a tornado. Addison, get away from there. Don't touch that dangerous animal. The little girl ran home crying while Patricia screamed at my house. Keep your vicious beasts away from our children. I'll call animal control. It's inside my home office. I watched everything unfold on my security monitors while my smart home system captured every word in high-def audio. Every threat, every lie, every attempt at manipulation was being preserved in multiple backup locations. The personal cost of Patricia's campaign hit me that night when I found those hateful words spray-painted on my car. Go back where you came from. In red letters across my windshield, a dead rat had been left on my doorstep with a note that simply said, "You're next." For the first time since this began, I felt genuinely tired. Not scared, never scared. But tired of dealing with this kind of hatred in 2024. I sat in my home office looking at a photo on my phone. Sarah, my late wife, smiled back at me from our last vacation together. You always told me to take the high road, I whispered to her image. But sometimes, baby, the high road leads straight to a cliff, and someone needs to stop people like Patricia from pushing others off. My phone buzzed urgently. A text from my deputy chief boss. There's pressure from the city council about the situation in your neighborhood. Some members are pushing for your suspension pending investigation. I stared at the message, feeling my jaw clenched. Patricia had connections I hadn't known about, strings she was pulling behind the scenes. Another text came through. What do you want us to do? I thought for a long moment, then typed back, schedule the press conference for tomorrow, 3 p.m. At City Hall. Mandatory attendance for all department heads. The response was immediate. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back? I smiled grimly. I'm sure it's time. I spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering every piece of evidence, every recording, every screenshot. Patricia, meanwhile, was riding high on her perceived success. She'd seen the announcement about tomorrow's police press conference and assumed it was her victory. Everyone, come to City Hall tomorrow, she posted in her groups. The police chief is going to address my complaints. We're going to expose this criminal once and for all. She even called a few friends to coordinate their attendance. Bring signs, she told them. Make sure the media sees that we won't tolerate dangerous elements in our neighborhood. Tyler posted a video of his mother practicing her speech in the mirror. Chief, this man is terrorizing our family. He's a threat to public safety. Patricia was so confident, so sure of her victory, that she never stopped to wonder why the press conference had been called so quickly, or why the announcement had used my name. That night, unable to sleep, I did one final review of everything that had led to this moment. Patricia Thompson had spent years making life hell for anyone she deemed unsuitable for her precious neighborhood. 3 families were driven out, countless others harassed, all because they didn't fit her narrow definition of who belonged. Tomorrow, she would learn that karma sometimes comes wearing a badge. As I finally drifted off to sleep, my phone showed one last message from the mayor. Marcus, I hope you know what you're doing. I smiled in the darkness. Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing. Patricia had demanded 20 police cars called for the chief and insisted on justice. Tomorrow she'd get all 3, just not in the way she expected. What Patricia didn't know was that tomorrow's press conference would change everything. But who exactly would be standing at that podium comment? It's time. If you think the truth is about to explode. City Hall was absolutely packed by 2:45. With every local news outlet setting up cameras and reporters checking their microphones, the official topic was community safety and recent incidents, which was vague enough to draw everyone's attention, but specific enough to make Patricia think this was about her complaints. She arrived early with an entourage of 10 supporters, positioning herself in the front row like she was the guest of honor. She'd even dressed for the occasion in her best suit, carrying a folder of what I assumed was her evidence against me. The podium bore a sign reading, Police Chief Marcus Washington to speak. But Patricia was so focused on her upcoming moment of triumph that she didn't even register the name. Where's this police chief? She asked the person next to her. I need to speak with him before he starts. He needs to hear what this criminal has been doing. At exactly 3 o'clock, I walked into the room through the side entrance. I was wearing my full-dress uniform, every medal and commendation I'd earned over 20 years of service on display. The press corps straightened up, sensing something significant was about to happen. Patricia saw me and immediately stood up, pointing dramatically. Officer, that's him. That's the man I've been calling about. Arrest him right now. Several reporters turned their cameras toward her, confused by the outburst. Security moved to approach her, but I raised a hand to stop them. Instead of responding to Patricia directly, I walked past her to the podium, my dress shoes clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. The confusion on her face was already worth everything I'd endured. What are you doing? Patricia shrieked as I adjusted the microphone. You can't be up there. Someone stop him. Where's the chief? I demand to speak to the chief. I looked at her calmly, then addressed the room. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm here today to address some concerning incidents that have occurred in the Oakwood Estates neighborhood. Patricia was practically vibrating with rage. He's lying. He's impersonating an officer. This is illegal. Someone arrest him, I continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Before we begin, I'd like to share some evidence that's been collected over the past 2 weeks. What you're about to see may be disturbing, but it's important for our community to understand the kind of behavior that we as a city will not tolerate. The lights dimmed slightly as the presentation screen lit up behind me, The first video showed Tyler's social media post, complete with Patricia in the background, directing him to make him look dangerous. The room fell silent except for the sound of keyboards as reporters began typing furiously. The second piece of evidence was the audio from Patricia's call to the blogger. Her voice filled the room. Just look at him. People will believe it. They always do when it's, someone like him. Heard several sharp intakes of breath from the audience. The third video showed the vandalism to my property. Tyler's face clearly visible as he spray-painted that horrible slur on my garage door. The fourth and final piece was the original 911 call from the grocery store. Patricia's voice hysterical as she demanded 20 police cars for a man who had simply asked for his tomatoes back. When the lights came back up, the room was deadly silent. Every camera was now pointed at Patricia, whose face had gone from red to white to an interesting shade of green. This is all fake," she stammered, though her voice had lost all its previous conviction. "He set me up. Heat. But her protest died as I reached into my jacket pocket. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as I pulled out my badge and placed it on the podium with a deliberate thud that echoed through the space. "Ms. Thompson," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone, "2 weeks ago, you asked who I am. You called 911 demanding 20 police cars. You wanted to speak to the chief?" I paused, letting the moment build. "Well, I'm the chief of every single one of them. I am Police Chief Marcus Washington." The words rang out across the room like a thunderclap. "I've been serving the city for 6 months. I moved to Oakwood Estates 2 weeks ago to better understand the community. I serve to see firsthand how our citizens interact when they don't know they're being observed by law enforcement." The explosion of noise was immediate and deafening.
Reporters
Jumped to their feet, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Patricia's supporters scrambled away from her like she was radioactive. Someone in the back shouted, "She called the cops on the police chief," which immediately became a chant taken up by others. Patricia literally fainted, crumbling to the floor in a heap of designer suit and broken dreams.
Tyler
In a moment of pure teenage panic, tried to run for the exit but tripped over his own feet, crashing into a row off chairs in what would become the second most watched video of the day. As paramedics rushed to attend to Patricia, I continued calmly, "Patricia Thompson, when you're feeling better, you're under arrest for filing false police reports, aggravated harassment, criminal threatening, and conspiracy to commit defamation. You have the right to remain silent, which I strongly suggest you exercise for once." Patricia, semi-conscious and being loaded onto a stretcher, mumbled something that sounded like, but you can't be." I leaned down so only she could hear. "Me, ma'am, I literally run the entire police force. Every single officer reports to me." As they wheeled her out, Tyler in handcuffs behind her, the room erupted again. A young reporter turned to her veteran colleague with eyes wide as saucers. "This is better than Watergate. Did you see her face when he pulled out the badge?" Patricia's supporters scattered like roaches when the lights came on. One woman desperately, trying to hide her, stand with Patricia's sign behind, her back as cameras swiveled in her direction. The mayor, seated in the VIP section, loosened his tie nervously and whispered urgently to his aide, "Draft a statement immediately. Distance the city from her. Say she was never representative of our values." Tyler, his hands cuffed behind his back, was sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, you said he was nobody. Said we own this town. You said the police would take our side." The young officer escorting him shook his head slightly. "Kid, your mom just spent 2 weeks harassing our boss. Nobody owns Chief Washington." The hashtag Kieran called the cops on the chief was trending before I even finished the press conference. But I wasn't done yet. There was more to come. And Patricia Thompson was about to learn that calling the cops on the police chief was just the beginning of her problems. But the arrest was just the beginning. What would happen to the woman who called 20 cops on their own boss-type karma police if you think she got exactly what she deserved? Within 4 hours of the press conference, Patricia Thompson's life had completely imploded in the most publicly humiliating way possible. The video of her fainting went viral with over 100 million views in the first 48 hours. spawning countless memes and remixes set to everything from classical music to death metal. Her employer, a high-end real estate firm that prided itself on integrity and inclusion, released a statement before the sun even set. We do not condone discrimination in any form. Patricia Thompson's employment has been terminated effective immediately. The speed at which she went from neighborhood queen bee to social pariah was genuinely breathtaking. Even people who had supported her just days before were now claiming they always knew something was off about her. The legal consequences hit just as hard as the social ones. Patricia faced 4 separate criminal charges, and while her lawyer managed to negotiate away jail time, she wasn't escaping unscathed. 2 years of probation, $50,000 in fines, and 500 hours of community service, specifically focused on racial sensitivity training. The judge, a woman with absolutely no patience for nonsense, told Patricia, "You wanted the police involved? Oh, now you've got their full attention for the next 2 years." Tyler's fate was sealed in juvenile court, 90 days in detention, 500 hours of community service, and expulsion from his school. His dreams of getting into a good college evaporated the moment offensive vandalism became part of his permanent record. During his sentencing, Tyler had desperately tried to shift all the blame to his mother. "She made me do it," she said. "If I didn't help her, she'd take away my car, my phone, everything. She told me we were protecting our home." The juvenile court judge, a non-incensed woman with 30 years on the bench, wasn't buying it. "Young man, you're 16 years old. That's old enough to know that spray painting horrible words is wrong, regardless of what your mother says. You made choices." As they left the court, Tyler was over hard, asking his public defender, "Is my life really over? Will any college accept me now?" The lawyer sighed heavily. "It's not over, but son, you've made your path significantly harder. This will follow you." Patricia, in her own separate hearing, was still trying to play victim to the bitter end. "This unfair treatment, he targeted me because I'm white and successful." The prosecutor, a composed Asian American woman, calmly presented 57 distinct pieces of evidence. "Ma'am, you targeted him from the moment you saw him. We have it all documented on video that you recorded and posted online. You literally created the case against yourself." The Oakwood Estates HOA held an emergency meeting that Patricia was notably not invited to. Her removal from the board was unanimous, with even her former allies voting against her. "She's made us all look like bigots," one member complained. "My property value is going to tank because of her," which was ironic considering property values we're all Patricia had claimed to care about. The family that bought Patricia's house 6 months later, after the bank foreclosed on, it was a delightful black family doctor. Johnson, her husband, and their 3 kids. The poetic justice of it was so perfect that Linda called me specifically to share the news. "You should see her face when she drives by to get her mail from the P.O. box." Linda laughed. "It's like someone's forcing her to eat lemons." The viral explosion was perhaps the most brutal part of Patricia's downfall. Someone created a video game called Karen vs. the Chief, where players had to avoid calling the cops on increasingly obvious authority figures. Her fainting video was remixed into no fewer than 50 different songs, my personal favorite being a techno version that sampled her "Send 20 police cars" scream. Tyler's trip and fall became a TikTok dance trend called the Tyler Tumble. Major news outlets picked up the story, with everyone from CNN to the BBC running segments on the woman woe, called "The Cops on the Police Chief." Ellen mentioned it in her monologue. Trevor Noah did a whole segment, and someone even made a documentary that premiered on a major streaming platform. Patricia tried one last desperate attempt to salvage her reputation with a GoFundMe titled, "Victim of Police Entreatment, Help Me Fight Back." The description was a rambling mess of accusations, conspiracy theories, and thinly veiled racist dog whistles. It raised exactly $3.50, all from Tyler, before being taken down for violating the platform's terms of service. Her final public appearance was a Facebook Live video from her empty house boxes stacked behind her as she prepared to move. "This is all a setup," she ranted to her dwindling audience. "Not racist. I have a black dentist. I shop at stores owned by those people." The comment section was brutal. "Sure, Karen. Cope harder. Cry more racist." This you followed by screenshots of her worst posts. My response to all of this was measured and professional. I didn't gloat publicly, though. Privately, I'll admit to watching the fainting video more than once. I donated the money from the civil lawsuit to youth programs focused on diversity and inclusion. I started a community policing initiative that included regular town halls where residents could meet their officers in casual settings. I even implemented a new training program for my department called Assumptions and Authority: How Bias Affects Policing. When asked about Patricia in interviews, I always kept it simple. This was never about one person. It's about making sure everyone in our community feels safe and welcome, regardless of what they look like. But my favorite moment came when a reporter asked if I had any regrets about how things went down. My only regret, I said with a completely straight face, is that she asked for 20 cars and I could only send 2 to arrest her. Budget constraints, you know. 1 year later, fate would bring us face to face one more time. But would either of us be ready for what happened next? Cometh crying emoji, if Patricia's tears bring you joy. 1 year later, I was doing a routine community patrol downtown, something I made sure to do at least once a week to stay connected with the people I served. It was a beautiful spring afternoon, and I was checking on the community service crews cleaning up the park when I saw a familiar figure in an orange vest bent over picking up trash with one of those grabber tools. The teenager straightened up and turned around, and there was Tyler Thompson, looking like a completely different person from the entitled brat who'd stolen my tomatoes. He was thinner. His face had lost that smug expression, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had learned hard lessons. The moment he saw me, he froze like a deer in headlights, his hand tightening on the trash bag until his knuckles went white. "Chief Washington," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stood there for about 30 seconds, just observing him. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, and suddenly the tough guy facade crumbled completely. "I'm sorry." The words burst out of him like a dam breaking. "I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I was racist. Was everything wrong with this world?" He was full and sobbing now, stunt and tears streaming down his face. "My mom taught me to think that way, but I chose to do those things. I chose to hurt you. I ruined my life and I deserve it." His supervisor started to approach, concerned about the commotion, but I waved them off. "Your mother taught you," I said quietly. "But you're right. You chose to spray paint my house. You chose to use those words. You chose to post those videos." Tyler nodded miserably, wiping his face with his sleeve. "I know I hate myself. I destroyed everything. My future is gone." "No," I said firmly, and he looked up in surprise. "Your future isn't gone. It's damaged. There's a difference. Gone means no hope of repair. Damage means you have to work harder to fix it." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out to him. Tyler stared at it like it might bite him. "Second Chance Youth Program," I explained. "They specialize in helping young people with records rebuild their lives. College isn't impossible, just harder. Employment isn't impossible, just more challenging." Tyler's hand shook as he took the card. "Why would you help me?" he asked, his voice cracking. After everything I did, I thought about it for a moment before answering. "Because hate taught you to hate. Your mother fed your poison from birth. Maybe kindness can teach you something different." "I don't deserve this," Tyler said, clutching the card like a lifeline. "Probably not," I agreed, which made him flinch. "But grace isn't about deserving. It's about recognizing that people can change if they really want to. The question is, do you really want to?" Tyler nodded so hard I thought his head might fall off. "Yes, God. Yes. I volunteer at the food bank now. I'm trying to make up for it to be better." I studied him for anathermum and then nodded. "Then, call that number, do the work." And Tyler, he looked up hopefully. "Don't waste this chance. You won't get another one from me." As I walked away, I heard him whisper, "Thank you." I didn't respond, just kept walking. Redemption wasn't mine to give. All I could offer was opportunity. Later that evening, at the annual Unity BBQ that had become an Oakwood Estates tradition, Linda found me manning the grill. "You know, Tyler Thompson volunteers at the food bank now," she said conversationally. So I heard, I replied, flipping burgers. His mother still blames you for everything, she continued. Posts about it on some fringe sites. Says you're part of a conspiracy to replace white people. I chuckled, shaking my head. Some people never learn, Linda. They'd rather cling to their hate than admit they were wrong. She nodded, then pointed across the park. But some do learn. Look. I followed her gesture and saw Tyler in the distance serving food to a diverse line of families. He was smiling, actually smiling, as he handed a plate to a little black girl who thanked him shilly. Our eyes met across the park, and he gave me a respectful nod. I returned it, then went back to my grilling. A young boy, maybe 7 or 8, tugged on my apron. Mr. Police Chief, he said excitedly. My mom says you're a hero. She says you stopped a bad lady. I knelt down to his level, smiling. I'm not a hero, buddy. I just did my job. Real heroes are people who choose to change when they realize they're wrong. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done. The boy nodded solemnly, as if I'd shared some great wisdom, then ran off to play. I stood up and looked around. At the gathering families of every color and background, sharing food, laughing kids playing together without any thought of differences. This was what Patricia had been so afraid of. This mixing, this unity, this proof that her narrow worldview was dying. That night, back in my office, I pulled out that photo of Sierra one more time. You were right, baby, I said softly. The high road does lead somewhere. Sometimes it just takes others longer to find it, but some of them do find it eventually. And that's how a racist Karen called the cops on the police chief. She wanted 20 police cars. She got them, just not the way she expected. Patricia Thompson thought her white privilege and HOA position made her untouchable. She thought she could terrorize anyone who didn't look like her. She thought wrong. In the end, she lost everything. Her job, her house, her reputation, her freedom, all because she couldn't mind her own business and leave people alone. The lessons here are simple, but important. Don't judge people by their skin color because you never know who you're talking. 2. Your private social media isn't that private when you're committing crimes. Karma is undefeated, and it has a sense of humor. Most importantly, hate might be taught, but so is change. Tyler is proof that even these worst of us can choose to be better if we're willing to do the work. If this story hits different, smash that subscribe button. Share it with everyone who needs to see karma in action. Comment Karma Police. If Patricia got exactly what she deserved, and remember, be kind to everyone you meet. You never know when your neighbor might be your boss's boss's boss. Until next time, this is Chief Marcus Washington saying, mind your business, love your neighbors, and always, always think before you call the cops. Peace out. Well, if this story made you feel better about your own life choices, our job is done. Give it a like and check out the next BD Stories twist.